Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 52 of the Patreon podcast. We've been doing this for a full year. I'm very, very happy with that. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue the podcast format or if I'm going to pivot to something else, but we'll see. I'm recording this about 2 weeks before this goes out, so I have a little bit of time to think. Anyway, I wanted to talk about something that is incredibly relevant to the 1 year anniversary of this, and that is never being complacent. And I think that this is something that's really important as a creator. It's something very important to me anyway, where I'm not just focused on one specific thing over and over for the rest of my life. Like I've mentioned that the 2-hour track challenge is something that is very integral to my creative process right now, but I'm open to that changing. Like I'm not complacent with the idea. It's like, well, I'm just going to be doing this for the rest of my life. And that's entirely not going to be the case. I'm sure that something else will come up at some point and maybe I will pivot. I'll work onto something else for a little while. And I think that there's a lot to be said about just not being complacent. I was going to say not being happy with where you are, but obviously you should work to be happy with what you're doing. There's a cat. But I think that never taking what you have for granted is really important, because that keeps your eyes open for new opportunities, and that keeps you hungry for expansion and just trying new things. And maybe those things won't work, but it's important to have the flexibility and the knowledge that you should be looking for those things rather than just expecting them to fall into your lap, because that rarely happens. Another thing about not being complacent is it makes you more flexible when things come up. Recently, I've been working with a distributor whose methods are changing on how to submit and process audio. And this distributor in particular has been like a real good source of income for me. And all of a sudden, everything's changing. And that's sent me into a little bit of a panic spiral for the past couple days, because like all of a sudden, is this source of income going to change? Like, how am I going to recoup the loss for this every month and all of this stuff? And I started to realize that I will find a way to make it work. I just have to keep my eyes open. And not being complacent in this way was my problem, where I was just like, oh yeah, this service will always be this way and it will always do this and they'll always send me a check every month. And that started to not happen the way that I wanted. And it was incredibly stressful because I was complacent. I was feeling like, well, this is solid. This is set in stone. It's never going to change. And everything always changes, especially on the internet these days. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about the idea that you shouldn't just sit on your laurels and expect everything to happen for you. Which, I mean, duh, but it's also just valuable to not just sit there. I kind of lost my train of thought, I guess. I want to talk about just the podcast in general then. Going back to never being complacent, it's just like I've been doing this for a full year now. I'm very happy that I never really missed my deadline for this. I think I was late a time or two, but for the most part, I was pretty on point, and that makes me happy. But with the podcast in general, I'm not sure if this is going to just kind of turn into a thought of the week kind of thing, which I guess it kind of already is, or just kind of like a personal creative journal, like my own process. And maybe I'll turn it into a Q&A for people who are interested in that kind of thing. Like I would really like to get people's questions and answer them, and hopefully work on specific problems with people. There's a lot of things that I want to do with this weekly slot, and it might just go with more creative ideas. Like I wrote down all these creative ideas like back in February, and I've just been kind of going through them when I have the time. And really my intention is to take all of these recordings and transcribe them into words and turn it into an audiobook, and that's really one of my projects for 2021, I hope, which I've been saying for like the last 3 years, but I'm in a position where I can actually do that now. I think that's really it. I'm so happy that I've been able to do this for a full year, and I want to keep doing it. I think the process that I have right now is really good. where it's just done 90% on my phone, and then I just upload it from my laptop because Patreon's app doesn't allow audio uploads, unfortunately. But it's been really good, and I'm really happy that I'm able to do it. And the handful of people who are listening to these, I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. But yeah, that's a full year in the books, and I really do hope that we have another one in us. I think that there's a lot more to talk about, but it's going to be a little bit more freeform. So if you have questions, if you have something that you want me to talk about, please let me know. I would be more than happy to put it on the docket and make it into the thing. Oh, I also want to mention that I intend on releasing the old episodes probably on YouTube or something else. That would allow me to essentially have kind of a creative exploration series in the like a whole year's worth of episodes just kind of in the bank. I can work on pushing those out and scheduling them, and then essentially you, the people who are listening on Patreon, you will be listening to this now. Anybody else will be listening to a year-old episode, and I think that that's fairly fair when it comes to exclusivity. That's kind of what I do with the 2-hour track challenge. So that's everything I have. That's kind of my plans for the future when it comes to this time slot. But I'm really happy with where we're at. So thank you so much again for listening, and thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. I really do appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one, whatever that may be. Be remarkable.